The rain fell like shattered glass that evening, splintering against the cracked windshield of a small, beaten-down car crawling along the edge of a deserted highway. The headlights flickered with every bump, as if the car itself was struggling to stay alive, much like the woman gripping the steering wheel. Her name was Lena, 32, a face that once held laughter and light, now shadowed with exhaustion and quiet despair. She wasn't driving toward a destination anymore. She was driving away, from a life that had fallen apart piece by piece until nothing was left but silence. Her hands trembled slightly as she tightened her grip. The gas tank was nearly empty. Her phone battery blinked its last red bar. The sky had turned from gray to black, and the world around her had become a blur of rain, wind, and loneliness. Every drop that hit the glass sounded like a reminder of how much she'd lost: her home, her job, and the man she thought she would spend forever with. Lena whispered to herself, voice trembling, just a little further, just find somewhere to stop. But the road stretched endlessly, a ribbon of wet asphalt leading nowhere. She hadn't eaten in over a day. Her clothes were damp from the leaking roof of her car, and her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. It wasn't just the car breaking down. It was her, piece by piece, heart by heart. She had left her hometown that morning, telling herself she was chasing a fresh start. But the truth was harder to admit: she was running from everything that reminded her she had failed. No job would hire her after months of layoffs. The man she loved had called her, too broken. Her parents had stopped answering her calls. Even her landlord had thrown her out. So she drove, anywhere but back. Suddenly, the car sputtered, coughed, and fell silent. She tried the ignition twice, nothing. The dashboard lights dimmed, and the rain began to roar harder, blurring the last bit of light from the world. Lena let her forehead fall against the steering wheel. The sound of her sobs mixed with the drumming of the storm outside. Her heart ached with that unbearable thought: no one's coming. Minutes turned into hours. Cars flashed by, bright headlights cutting through the rain, but none slowed down. Not one. Each passing beam was another silent rejection. She raised her hand once, waving frantically, hoping someone, anyone, would see. But every driver sped past. No one wanted to stop for a soaked stranger on a lonely road in the middle of nowhere. Her phone finally died, its light fading like the last bit of hope in her chest. She sat there in the dark, trembling, staring out the window at the blur of rain and mud. And then she saw it. Far in the distance, faint, flickering lights. Not from a car this time, but from a small shack or garage off the main road. It looked abandoned, half swallowed by darkness, but it was something. She opened her car door, rain slamming into her face, and wrapped her coat tighter as she stepped out into the storm. The cold bit deep. Mud soaked her shoes. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she kept walking. The lights grew closer, two hanging bulbs swaying from a tin-roofed structure, where a hand-painted sign read, Miller's Auto Works. Inside, the faint hum of a generator broke the silence. The place looked half alive, tools scattered, an old truck under repair, a small heater flickering in the corner. And there, leaning over an engine, was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his clothes stained with oil, and his hair damp from the rain. His hands moved with the quiet precision of someone who knew machines better than people. His name, stitched on his jacket, read, Tom. Lena hesitated at the doorway, her voice barely audible. Through the wind. Excuse me, sir. My car broke down just a mile from here. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing under the flicker of the dim light. There was something weathered about him, a face that had seen its share of storms, both outside and within. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, without a word, he reached for his coat and a flashlight. Show me. The rain swallowed them as they walked back down the road, the beam of his light cutting through the darkness. Her car sat there like a ghost, half hidden in fog. Tom bent down, checked under the hood, and sighed. Alternator's dead, he said simply, voice low but steady. You're not going anywhere tonight. Lena nodded weakly, hugging herself. She didn't even know what to say. He looked at her for a moment, really looked at her, and then quietly said, come on. You'll catch your death out here. Back inside his small garage, he offered her a dry towel and pointed toward an old wooden chair by the heater. You can warm up. There's coffee, if you don't mind it black and burnt. For the first time that night, Lena smiled faintly. I don't mind. The coffee was bitter, but the warmth in her hands felt like something she hadn't known in weeks: comfort. She looked around at the simple space, a few photos on the wall, an old radio playing faint country tunes, and a framed picture of a young boy holding a wrench beside Tom, both smiling wide. Your son? She asked softly. Tom's eyes flickered toward the photo before he nodded once. Was. He passed 5 years ago. Drunk driver. The silence that followed was heavy, but not cold. It was the silence of shared pain, two broken souls who had forgotten what it meant to be seen. That night, Lena fell asleep on the couch in the corner of the garage, wrapped in an old blanket that smelled faintly of motor oil and kindness. She didn't dream of escape or failure, only of warmth, and the faint sound of rain softening outside. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. When Lena woke the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a soft blanket of mist over the fields beyond the garage. The air smelled of wet earth and gasoline, and for a brief moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memory returned, the broken car, the rain, the stranger who had offered her warmth when no one else would even stop. Tom was already awake, hunched over her car outside, sleeves rolled up, hands blackened with grease. The sun's first rays caught in the faint streaks of gray in his hair. There was something steady and calm in the way he moved, as though fixing engines was his way of breathing, of keeping pain at bay. She stepped outside quietly. You've been working since morning. He didn't look up. Didn't have much else to do. The silence stretched, but it wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, like two people standing on the edge of something they didn't yet understand. Thank you, for last night, Lena finally whispered. You didn't have to help me. Tom paused, wiped his hands on a rag, and said softly, nobody has to help anyone. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't. That sentence hung in the air like a small miracle. Lena felt something stir inside her, something she thought had long died, hope. They spent the day together, working side by side. She handed him tools as he explained what he was fixing, and though she didn't understand half of it, she found comfort in the rhythm of it all. The hum of the generator, the clinking of metal, the smell of oil and rain. By noon, her stomach growled, and Tom smiled faintly for the first time. There's soup inside, canned stuff, but it's warm. They sat at a small wooden table, two mismatched bowls steaming between them. Lena caught her reflection in the cracked window beside them and barely recognized herself, not because she looked different, but because, for the first time in so long, she looked alive. When she asked him about the photo again, the one of him and his son, his expression changed. Not sad exactly, but far away, like someone remembering a dream that still hurt to wake from. His name was Joey, Tom said quietly. Loved engines more than anything. Said he'd take over this place one day. He was 17 when a drunk driver hit his bike. I buried my best friend that week. The words trembled slightly as he spoke, but his eyes didn't. They were steady, strong, like someone who had learned to live with pain by fixing what could still be saved. Lena felt a lump form in her throat. I'm sorry, she murmured. That's a pain I can't imagine. Tom gave a slow nod. You learn to live with it. Or at least, you try. Some nights it feels like the world stops making sense. But every now and then, someone walks in, like you, and reminds you that maybe it's not all lost. His words hit deeper than he probably knew. She looked down, tears welling in her eyes. I lost everything too, she said softly. My fiancé left. My parents stopped calling. I got laid off from my job and couldn't pay rent. I thought if I just kept driving, maybe I'd find somewhere new. Somewhere to start over. Tom looked at her for a long moment, then said simply, you found it. Those 3 words broke something inside her, not in pain, but in release. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear that someone, anyone, thought she still belonged somewhere. The next few days unfolded like a quiet sunrise. Lena stayed at the garage, helping clean, cooking small meals, and learning how to fix small things under Tom's watchful guidance. She laughed again, softly at first, then more freely, as if laughter had been waiting years to find her voice again. Every night, they'd sit outside under the dim porch light, sipping coffee and listening to the distant crickets. Tom rarely spoke much, but when he did, every word carried weight. One evening, as the wind rustled through the trees, Lena looked out at the horizon and whispered, do you ever wonder why life takes everything from you, just to give you something unexpected? Tom smiled faintly, eyes on the stars. Maybe because we wouldn't appreciate the light if we never sat in the dark. That night, Lena cried quietly under her blanket, not from sadness, but from a feeling she hadn't known in months. Gratitude. By the end of the week, her car was running again. Tom had replaced the alternator, fixed the leaks, and even cleaned the seats. When she came outside that morning, he was tightening the last bolt. All set, he said, brushing his hands off. She'll get you where you need to go. Lena stared at the car, then at him. And where do you think that is? Tom met her gaze, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Wherever you stop running. She looked down, heart heavy. I don't even know what that place looks like anymore. Then maybe it's not a place, he said quietly. Maybe it's just a feeling. Maybe it's here. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer and hugged him, the kind of hug that says everything words can't. For a man who had forgotten what human warmth felt like, the embrace startled him. But after a moment, he wrapped his arms around her, steady and gentle, like a father comforting a child lost too long. When she finally got into her car, she hesitated. Tom, you saved me, she whispered. He shook his head. No, Lena. You just needed someone to remind you that you could still be saved. As she drove away, the morning sun broke through the mist, spilling gold across the wet highway. In her rearview mirror, she saw him still standing there, watching quietly, hands in his pockets, a small smile softening his weathered face. For the first time in months, Lena didn't feel lost. She felt found. And though she didn't know it yet, that one act of kindness, a mechanic stopping for a stranger, would change both their lives forever. 3 months had passed since Lena last saw the small garage on the edge of that lonely road. Life had slowly begun to piece itself back together, like a cracked mirror mended with gold. She had found work at a small diner in a nearby town, saved enough for a modest apartment, and started painting again, something she hadn't done in years. But no matter how much time passed, she couldn't stop thinking about Tom, the quiet mechanic who fixed more than just her car. He had fixed something inside her that she thought was beyond repair. Every time she drove to work, she found herself glancing at the highway, half expecting to see his old garage appear again between the trees and fog. She remembered his words, maybe home isn't a place. Maybe it's a feeling. One Sunday morning, she decided it was time. She packed a small box of pastries from the diner, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and set out early for Miller's Auto Works. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with pink and orange streaks as her car rolled down the familiar road. Her heart raced with anticipation. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd thank him properly this time, maybe offer to help around the shop, maybe even tell him how much his kindness had changed her. But when she reached the old dirt turnoff, her smile faded. The garage looked different. The doors were locked, the tools neatly stored, and the sign that once read, Miller's Auto Works, hung crookedly, one chain broken and swinging in the wind. The place was silent, too silent. Lena stepped out, the box trembling slightly in her hands. A feeling of dread crawled up her spine. She walked around the side of the building, calling softly, Tom. It's me, Lena. Remember? No answer. Just the whisper of wind through the grass. She tried the front door, locked. Then she noticed something taped to the glass, a folded letter, sealed in plastic to protect it from rain. Her name was written across the front in careful, faded handwriting. For Lena. Her breath caught. With shaking fingers, she peeled it free and unfolded the paper. The moment her eyes met the first line, tears filled them instantly. Dear Lena. I figured if you ever came back, it would be because you found what you were looking for, and I hope you did. I didn't get the chance to tell you much about myself that night, and maybe that was for the best. You didn't need another sad story, you needed to believe that good people still existed. But the truth is, helping you helped me too. After Joey died, I stopped living. I fixed cars, not hearts. I stopped believing people could change. Then you came along, cold, scared, but still fighting. And something in your eyes reminded me of the way Joey used to look when life knocked him down but he stood up anyway. You gave me a reason to wake up again, to fix something that wasn't made of metal and wires. I didn't tell you then, but the doctor said my heart was failing. I didn't have much time left, and that's why I worked through the nights. I wanted to make sure your car ran smooth, because I knew it might be the last one I ever fixed. If you're reading this, it means the good Lord decided my shift here was over. But don't cry, kiddo. You gave me peace in my last days, more than I can ever repay. Promise me one thing, Lena. Keep moving forward. Don't hide from the world again. And when you see someone broken down on the side of the road, don't drive past. Stop. Help them. Be someone's reason to believe again. There's an old key taped under the counter, it's for the garage. I left it to you if you want it. Maybe one day, this place will mean to someone else what it once meant to me. Keep the coffee strong, and the kindness stronger. Tom. Asterisk. Lena couldn't breathe. The letter trembled in her hands as tears streamed down her face. She sank to her knees on the gravel, clutching the paper to her chest. He was gone. The man who had saved her, who had taught her that kindness still existed, had been fighting his own silent battle all along. And he hadn't told her, because he didn't want her to carry that weight. The world felt unbearably quiet, but in that silence, something beautiful stirred, the echo of his voice, his gentle laugh, his words about second chances. Lena walked to the back of the garage and found the key, just where he said it would be. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust floated in golden beams of light, and everything was just as he'd left it. The tools, the radio, the photo of him and Joey. On the workbench lay another envelope, smaller this time, with a note attached, for whoever keeps this place alive. Inside was a folded receipt and a small envelope of cash, his last savings. On the back of the receipt, in his rough handwriting, he'd written, "Every engine has a heart. Keep fixing them. Keep fixing people." Lena spent hours cleaning the shop that day, wiping every surface, sweeping the floors, and letting sunlight flood through the open doors. It wasn't just a garage anymore, it was a promise. Weeks later, a new sign hung where the old one once was. The same wooden board, now freshly painted, read, "Miller's Hope Garage, in memory of Tom and Joey." People in the nearby town began to notice. A young woman who once looked lost now stood behind the counter, greeting every customer with warmth. She fixed cars for free for those who couldn't afford it. She kept an old coffee pot running all day, just like Tom used to. And every time someone asked her why she did it, she'd smile softly and say, "Because once, someone stopped for me when no one else would." Months later, as the evening sun painted the garage in shades of gold, Lena locked up for the night. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stood outside, looking at the long road stretching into the horizon. Somewhere in the wind, she swore she could hear Tom's voice, that calm, steady tone that had once guided her through the storm. "Keep the kindness stronger." She smiled through her tears, whispering, "I will." The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of rain and motor oil. The old porch light flickered, glowing warm against the twilight. And though Tom was gone, his kindness lived on, in every car she fixed, every stranger she helped, every tear she wiped from another's face. Because sometimes, the smallest act of stopping for someone, can keep their heart beating long after your own has stopped. Glowing star, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stars of Kindness. Speech balloon, tell us in the comments, have you ever met someone whose kindness changed your life forever? Sparkles, because one person's compassion can rewrite another person's ending.